All right, coming to you live from San Francisco, the Structure Conference. I'm here with Jesse Robbins, CEO of OpsCode. Jesse, how are you doing?
I'm doing really well. How are you?
I'm doing fine. So you just got off a panel. It was you and Luke from Puppet and moderated by James Urquhart.
Yep.
Talking about DevOps. Can you just say sort of at a high level, what is DevOps? I hear it's all about culture.
It is all about culture. So DevOps is a cultural movement about aligning the business with the development organization, the operations organization, and really breaking down the historical barriers between those groups and focusing on actually working on what's important, which is creating business value or getting awesome things done.
So is it also developers who are then taking on more responsibility for the operations? Are they taking stuff away from or eating into some of the other responsibilities of the ops people, or vice versa?
It's a good question. So the shift is multifold. The most important thing to understand is that automation and sort of the new tools that have been built, particularly things like infrastructure as a service, kind of the general cloud revolution, have made a number of things that we used to have to deal with painfully over and over again, like basic server provisioning and infrastructure consumption generally. They've lowered the barrier so that there's not a lot of work to be done there. That's a much more scalable and efficient thing. So the kind of like repeated, I think Werner Vogels calls it undifferentiated heavy lifting, of which I and my colleagues in operations have done quite a lot of, is eliminated, and instead you're able to focus on really providing more value and enabling businesses by focusing on the tools required to do cool stuff like manage systems at scale, like doing dynamic reconfiguration, dynamic app deployment. And so the lines between operations and development begin to shift in these organizations. And the reason for that is that what you want is to be able to write code and get it into production as quickly as possible. And that requires a change in the way that you deal with things. One way is developers are now more frequently first line on call for the software that they write. If you want to ship software really quickly, you need to be able to fix problems really quickly, and that's a difference between those two environments. So it's not work really shifts around dramatically. It's that everybody gets to focus on what's important, which is, in the operations side, providing that fabric that software sits on top of. And on the development side, writing new stuff that is able to be deployed quickly and easily.
Cool. So now, who would be the prime targets for DevOps? And I know you started a whole conference around this. So who attends, and how have you seen it change over the last couple of years?
So DevOps is something that originated in web shops predominantly. So the way that we had to run large-scale websites worked differently than the way that enterprise IT management that sort of evolved over the past 35 years works. It's something different. And it required a new kind of tools that really weren't available except for homegrown tools that sort of the big web shops built over and over and over again. And so the people that come to conferences like Velocity and the organizations that are starting to make this cultural transition and begin to use the kinds of tools that enable that transition are really either developers and ops people in very dynamic organizations, mostly ones that depend on the web for revenue. However, as more and more of us depend on the web for revenue in a variety of different ways, as traditional enterprise businesses begin to depend on the web, the same patterns begin to apply, and CIOs of Fortune 500 companies begin asking, well, how are we able to be just as agile as the websites? I want to be able to do the same sorts of things. So it's begun as a revolution that started on the web side, but is beginning to permeate into the enterprise space more frequently. And so we see on that side greenfield projects, new projects where they have a license to start over and maybe build something that isn't sort of bound by the traditional sort of risk management oriented, very change control oriented processes that have worked for one part of the enterprise, but don't map well to this sort of cloud environment. And so we're seeing kind of a coming together both from the web ops world and then larger organizations that have these needs for scale and dynamic environments, where what they're able to do is take a risk and build something new. And so that's where we see lots of big financial services coming in, and then some occasional surprises from very traditional enterprises who, because of challenges of budget or economic concerns, have a compelling event that is making them switch over and decide, we really need to be able to do things the way that it works on the web, because we need that kind of agility and cost effectiveness and organizational flexibility in order to win, in order to have a competitive advantage.
Cool. And then last but not least, OpsCode Chef is a part of the installer software Crowbar.
Yep.
Can you just give a quick pitch for how that works?
So we love when data centers get APIs. And I think Dell has been making a number of very bold strides in order to help data centers, which has traditionally been Dell's environment, gain the kind of APIs required so that people can build what is essentially a private or public cloud on Dell hardware really efficiently. So we were fortunate enough to be included very early in the OpenStack project, and then also to develop a relationship with Dell to support the Crowbar project in order to be able to build bootstrap an OpenStack cluster in really under 30 minutes using software provided by Dell and OpsCode called Crowbar. And I think it's actually a really important step in what is likely to be a long journey for everyone, where what we're seeing is a shift from sort of no one quite understanding how to provide infrastructure as a service inside of a large organization to what is how the internet got built, rough consensus and running code. So Dell had the forethought to say let's build an open source tool in this space that and build around it that lets people try this out on Dell hardware, and that we got to work together in order to build that out. And I think it is both a great and functional first step that shows the way for really what's going to happen over the next decade in infrastructure.
Excellent. Jesse Robbins, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.